Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the 9th episode of Before the Bald Man Speaks. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Andrew Lawrence, and we are coming to you live directly after UFC on Fox 16, which I don't know how 16 UFC on Fox events have happened since the deal. It feels like we are moving through time at an accelerated rate. Nonetheless, we're celebrating a fantastic title defense by Tyler Jeffries Dillashaw over Renan Barao in a fantastic fourth round KO victory that was really just all T.J. Dillashaw all day. Renan Barao looked slow to the punch, and he had some moments in certain spots, but never was there enough of those moments strung together where we thought that TJ was in any type of damage. Joining me today on Before the Bald Man Speaks, a good buddy of mine. Most of you know him on Twitter as Joey G Sports, but on this podcast it's Joey Gardner. Joey, how you doing, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me back. I think I was on the second episode, and I can see you're doing well for yourself. You got some high-profile dudes flowing through here, so, you know, it was only right for you to bring me back on.
We're basically MMA podcast royalty right now.
You could say that for sure.
We're on the slow build, though. You know, right now we're like, just part of the royal court, maybe the jester, maybe an advisor in the corner, but pretty soon we'll take the throne.
Absolutely.
All right. So, huge main event, kind of a victory where T.J. Dillashaw, cements himself as the champion. There were still some lingering doubters out there. There was this narrative about Renan Barao being hurt early in the fight and going on autopilot. Basically, we saw a lot of the same thing. We saw Renan take some really big shots in rounds 1 and 2 and slow down considerably until TJ got the finish. Super impressed with TJ here.
Yeah, man, how can you not be? To be honest, that's one of the more impressive performances I've seen in recent memory. And to those that were questioning, was the first fight a fluke? Was it just a punch in the first round of the first fight that got Barao, off of his game and subsequently cost him the fight? I think that all the naysayers can put that theory to rest after tonight's card, because TJ just proved, which a lot of us could tell from watching the first fight, that his footwork, his movement, his unorthodox striking, and his ability to just roll away from Renan Barao's punches and kicks and not play into Renan Barao's style were ultimately going to win him this fight too.
I always thought the argument from the first fight that Renan Barao, was hurt from punches, that is a symptom of the technical skill of T.J. Dillashaw in the fight. So how could you, discredit that happened, or use that as some reason why he'd do better in the future? We saw that there's just a technical disparity between the two, and maybe even an athletic disparity. What happens to Renan Barao now? He's clearly going to beat, he's going to dominate all but maybe a handful of guys at 135. Do you think it's a smart move for him to move to 145 and look for other matchups there, become a top 10 fighter maybe in that weight division?
Inevitably, I think that's probably where he'll end up. As a lot of these guys get older, they have a harder and harder time cutting the weight to get down to 135 or 125, whatever it be. You do notice guys moving up as they get older. The problem with that has always been that his teammate Jose Aldo's a 145er, but on the same token, a lot of people have talked about him moving up to 155 at some point. So I think it's somewhat of a waiting game for him. I think if Aldo ends up moving up at some point, I think Barao will follow suit. As for right now, obviously TJ has his number, and that doesn't mean that Barao's not a good fighter. I think that he still beats most of the guys in the division, like you said, but I think there's interesting matchups for him still. And, he's stuck in that limbo where he's not going to be getting a title shot again anytime soon, most likely not unless the title changes hands. So obviously he'll become a huge Dominic Cruz fan here in the coming months. But one fight that I thought would be super intriguing after his bout took place at UFC 189. I know a lot of people might think it would be a huge rush for him at the moment, but I think a fight within the next year that I would really like to see to test, the potential of this prospect would be Thomas Almeida against Renan Barao. I think that would be a fantastic fight.
That would be a fantastic fight, but I'm wondering if, they're looking for Almeida not to lose. You got a Brazilian against, Brazilian there, and they might want that prospect, and kind of give him an easy path to the title. Fight, which I think is, kind of par for the course of UFC when you're talking about 55 and under. In the upper weight classes, they seem like more prone to throw together two legit contenders. Just final thoughts on the card. I really, think that Renan Barao's stuck in kind of this Junior Dos Santos situation where he's lost, now twice in a row to a champion, the champion, and is waiting for that, for the dethronement so that he can be back into the mix. Whereas that kind of happened very relatively quickly in the heavyweight division. I don't really foresee that happening so quickly in 35 pounds. T.J. Dillashaw right now, to me, just looked absolutely ferocious. His hand speed is unparalleled in a division where, fast hands are par for the course. The angles and the technical skills, they just seem like they are just enough above people in that weight division where he's just going to work you and put big shots on you for, 3 to 5 rounds. Now it's going to be all 5 rounds until someone can beat him. And there's just really no answer for it. We saw that he's hittable, but, at that weight class, he seems to have enough chin to, take the bad spots here and there, because he knows in the majority of the exchanges he's going to be the victor.
Yeah, that's a good point. He has proven to be a little bit hittable, but I think it's more that he ends up putting himself in those situations because of his, unorthodox movement. He cuts very tight angles, stuff that most guys wouldn't even try. He's got the speed and quickness to do it. So I guess from this point on, it's like who really challenges Dillashaw at this juncture? I mean, the division's a bit devoid of contenders, and some of it has to do with injuries. Obviously, Dominic Cruz and Rafael Sunsao are two guys that the UFC would like to see challenge for the title sooner rather than later. But they've got to get healthy. Cruz is supposed to be back at the beginning of the year, so I think that's an intriguing matchup. If Dominic Cruz is 100%, I think I would favor him over Dillashaw because I think he has some physical advantages, and I think he'll be a little bit bigger and has a lot of the same movement. The only thing is he doesn't punch as hard as T.J. Dillashaw does, so it's just tough, man. And, I don't think Sunsal's a real threat. What I would like to see and what would be intriguing too is, hear me out on this, say – Cruz comes back, he's not up to snuff, he can't get rid of Dillashaw, and Dillashaw defeats him. So then where do you go from there? I mean, maybe a Sunsao, but no one's really pandering to see that fight. So what do you say if Demetrius Johnson handles John Dodson, you do a Demetrius Johnson against T.J. Dillashaw? Who do you favor in that fight?
I mean, I'd probably favor TJ because, that's a tough one. But I think TJ's kickboxing is a little bit better in his kick game. That'd be a very interesting fight. And, when you're talking about these lower weight champions, I don't mind seeing a super fight between them. It's not the same impact on like a middleweight and a welterweight having a super fight. That seems to clog a division full of just like these absolute awesome matchups and really great personalities that I want to see,
sure.
Actually have their moment in the sun. There's no one I care about really seeing it at 125 pounds. Right. To fight Mighty Mouse, so why not throw him against TJ? The money fight at 135 right now is clearly Dominic Cruz. Unfortunately, the guy can't get healthy to do it, but the UFC probably puts TJ into a spot where he is, treading water, essentially, give him some sort of contender. Like Mighty Mouse had to beat Chris Carriasso. Let's find some guy who's floating around 7, who's got 2 or 3 wins. We'll feed him off. Dillashaw will dispatch him until we have the time for Cruz to come back. I don't favor Cruz in that fight, period. I really think that...
Just because of the layoff or just skill?
Oh, the layoff's tough, man. And his game is a speed-based game and a footwork-based game and all that stuff. Well, you learn it and you still remember it, just like being injured, especially with the knee injury, you can't work that stuff. And it's just going to be really hard for him. He looked fantastic. Oh, God. Who did he blow up?
Takeya Mizugaki.
Thank you. Mizugaki got just lit up. Mizugaki, a scary, kind of, leechy fellow, too. But, it's so hard. So many years out of the game, so many years out of the cage.
It's sad, man, because he was one of the best that I had seen at the lower weight classes.
the tragedy of the sport, really. When you talk about a small injury and then just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. He could have been out for 6 months and it would have just returned. That would have been a normal layoff for a champion, especially in the modern UFC. Some other great fights, though. Outside of the 35-pound, well, sticking in the 35-pound division, but moving to the female side of it, Miesha Tate, in my mind, dominates, rolls through Jessica Eye, setting up her trilogy fight with Ronda Rousey. And if anyone, doesn't think that fight's going to happen, they're in serious delusion, because that fight between those two women is probably the best payday that the UFC can get out of a Ronda Rousey fight that doesn't involve Cyborg.
I mean, yeah, what else are they going to do, right? Because no one's proven to be able to step up in that division, and everyone they try to run through Miesha to get back to that point or to get to that point, she just beats them. I mean, you could argue maybe some of those other wins of hers were controversial, particularly the Liz Carmouche fight. But I mean, I'm not a huge advocate of women's MMA. I don't enjoy a ton of the bouts. Like, let's be honest, the Jessamine Duke, Elizabeth Phillips fights on the prelim. Other than the nip slip, that fight was pretty awful.
Even the nip slip, it isn't worth it,
Yeah, I feel you. But Miesha Tate, man, she's tough, and you got to give her some credit for that. And Jessica I don't really see what everyone was all thrilled about her and picking her in this fight, because she's never really proven that she can overcome any tough mental obstacle. Every time she's been faced with an opponent that is, even anywhere near her skill level, she seemed to struggle a little bit. And I think it's a mental thing with her, man. I mean, when you can't beat Alexis Davis, I just don't think you're ever going to contend for a title, man.
Yeah, that's probably the truth of it. It was a stretch to, even give Alexis her title shot. Unfortunately, the talent level of women's 135-pound division just kind of is where it is. If you compare it, against the title fight that we saw, in the main event, it's just so night and day that, it's almost as if you can put a date on it. You can kind of see the evolution of the styles, and it's, right now, it's almost through the SEG era, or early UFCs during the dark period in weird backwards places in Alabama. That's the technique level that's operating at right now for 35-pound women. Earlier this week, a lot of people were telling me how I was going to roll and figure out how to stop Miesha Tate. I was a huge supporter of Miesha Tate this whole way. I think the one skill that I clearly showed a deficit in was wrestling. I mean, just watch Miesha Tate out wrestle an Olympian. So, to me, there was a lot of silly, enthusiasm behind I and the idea that she might present a unique challenge to Ronda Rousey.
No.
Jessica I fighting Ronda Rousey is another first-round finish. I think that Miesha Tate actually has a legit chance of making it a scrap that goes more than a round.
Yeah, for sure. She proved that once. She went rounds with Ronda, and I like that fight. I mean, anything that's Ronda's got this aura about her, whether or not that she is as amazing as everyone thinks she is. I mean, it's there because she just destroys all these subpar individuals that come up against her. Or in Kat Zingano's case, an athlete that just made a really stupid decision to start that fight. But Miesha's been in there with her twice, and she knows what she needs to do to try to find success, or at least to give herself an opportunity to find success. And I mean, I think her striking has improved a little bit to the point to where I wouldn't say that Ronda's a better striker than her, because I'm not particularly impressed with Ronda's striking. I mean, like you said, coming into this matchup, it was pretty cut and dry on paper. Miesha was the better wrestler than Jessica I, and I was going to probably have problems with that. But when you watch the fight, Miesha outstruck her, clearly. I mean, she pieced her up. She dropped her. I mean,
power. It seemed like she almost found her power shots in this fight.
I got a text from my brother in the fight. He was like, "Miesha's showing some power. What's going on here, man? Are we about to sweat this under in this women's fight?" So I mean,
she sat down. It's like she sat down on punches. She's really just throwing from a flat-footed position more often than not. Now she's definitely hittable. So I would love to see Miesha Tate fight Ronda Rousey in a fight where they couldn't take each other down. Just MMA gloves boxing. So, unlimited clinch work, no judo throws allowed.
I think there's several women in that division that would give Ronda, they would piece her up a little bit with no takedowns or no judo. A lot of people are bashing on Holly Holm after her last performance and her first performance, and saying that she doesn't look all that good, she doesn't land that much, she hasn't found her range, whatever. But the striking is good. She just hasn't found a way to adapt it. I mean, you look at how long she's been doing MMA, and people that have been doing MMA as long as she has, they don't find that type of title challenging success that quickly. So I think people, I don't know why I got off on a Holly Holm rant, but I mean, they need to slow the roll a little bit. And the whole women's division in general is young. So people like Miesha Tate, who have actually been fighting for quite a while, we're starting to see a little development in the game to where, I mean, that's really the only fight you can make right now. Her and Ronda, after Ronda handles bitch in Brazil.
And it gives Holly Holm enough time to develop and take 2 more fights before she ends up, being sacrificed at the sacrificial altar of Ronda. I actually think that Holly Holm's implementing and kind of creating a style that's almost like an anti-Ronda Rousey style. She's using those long, big lumbar legs to throw kicks out there and just keep her at distance. I think that's a fine strategy against someone who judo throws people and instantly armbars them when you have zero experience in the submission game. Well, not zero experience, but limited background in submission and in grappling. It's a perfect tactic for Holly Holm. Throw kicks. They don't have to accurately land. They just have to keep the space and keep the fight at a kickboxer's distance, at a Muay Thai distance. That is the type of game plan that's going to neutralize anything that Ronda can do. Because Ronda boxes and does judo, so you need to be in fist range or you need to, be in that grapple range. And, a kickbox is the perfect style to, neutralize that. So I actually think that Holly Holm's doing something smart. Maybe it's not, quite there yet and she hasn't perfected her accuracy game for MMA, but I think that it's developing.
For sure. I mean, and there's only 2 ways that you can beat Ronda Rousey. You'd have to have a powerful enough punch to knock her out clean with a shot as she rushes in, or you got to keep distance. And no one's been able to keep distance yet, so why not be the one to try to keep distance? People say Holm has no power, but I mean, if she was actually getting her range down a little better and connecting more cleanly and getting people on not just the end of her punches, but, getting in good range, she would have power. I've seen her knock women out before. I mean, it is what it is. But anyway, enough about her. She wasn't even on this card.
Yeah, weird tangent. Let's talk about probably what I thought was the fight of the night. Paul Felder losing a unanimous decision to Edson Barboza. Scores of 29-28. How did you score this fight? I easily think that you could have handed this one over to Paul.
It could have gone either way. I mean, I think the first round, I saw a lot of people on Twitter scoring it for Felder. And the second round, some people were kind of split. I think you could have honestly given the first or second round to either guy. And the third round was clearly Barboza because you can see Felder starting to slow down. The body kicks were taking a toll. And plus, it became evident that Barboza had a speed advantage. Yeah. So, I mean, Barboza, to me, he won the fight. So regardless of how you scored the rounds, they were close, whatever. If we're judging the fight as a whole, he clearly won. So, I mean, Felder's good, but he's still got a bit to grow. And I think the spinning shit was cool. Like, Nick Diaz would have been extremely pissed at the amount of spinning shit going on. Somewhere, wherever the hell he was, if he was back in Stockton, 209, what's up, bro? Where you at, Nick Diaz? He was pissed.
Spinning shit, homie? Spinning shit now?
He was pissed, but, it was cool for a while. But after a bit, I was like, I think Felder would do better if he tried to close the distance and clinch up a little bit. But,
I scored the first 2 rounds to Paul Felder. I think maybe that was a little bit of hometown fanning by me because I could understand having those rounds split. I think that the first round was extremely close. The second round, I think, led a little bit closer to Paul. But by the third round, you kind of saw Edson take control over the fight. So it was one of those times where my round score didn't really match up where I wanted the fight to be. Which is, I have advocated this for quite a while, and it's the use of what I like to call intelligent, use the intelligent 10-point must system. And that is if after the second round, it is an even fight, and you could literally say whoever wins this next round should win the fight, even if a guy edged out a little bit the first and the second round, just score to the other guy so you have it 19-19 going into the third. Like,
Why not
let's
20-20? Because either the first and second round, you could have said either got one. Why not make it a 10-10? I think 10-10s, I mean, people talk about 10-8s being utterly underused. And for some reason, I feel like we've had this conversation before. But 10-10s are underused as well, man. I mean, God, why pick that rounds where guys do nothing? Maybe each guy lands 8 or 9 significant strikes. And it's very difficult for fans to score. Like, for example, Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald, round 1. Now, that round was super even, and not that many punches were landed on either side.
Don't score it.
A round like that was going to decide that epic title fight had it gone the distance. I mean, that doesn't sit well with me. I think that something needs to be done about it, but, we go round and round talking about this, and nothing has changed. Maybe one day, but...
Let's talk a little bit about the decisions on this card, because there were some goddamn debacles. Let's read this. Jim Miller wins over Danny Castillo, and I think he deserved the nod, but someone gave a 30-27 to him, when I clearly thought that Danny had a round in there. I can look in my notes and find exactly which one. Brian Caraway was a properly scored fight, if pretty dull one.
Right.
Andrew Holbrook against Ramsey Ninjum in a straight robbery.
That was the worst.
Absolute
the worst.
Robbery. That was nonsense. And if you look at these scorecards, here we go, right? First of all, Ninjum could have won all 3 rounds. He won. In my book, I gave him the first and the third, giving him a 29-28 win. Every single judge gave, or 2 judges gave rounds 1 and 2 to Holbrook. And then 1 judge gave round 2 and 3 to Ninjum. That means every single judge scored that first round to Andrew Holbrook.
Oh, the first? I thought we said the second.
No! That's what I'm saying. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You can't, when you do the forensics on this, it's like every single judge scored the first round to Andrew Holbrook, a round that was clearly won by Ramsey Ninjum. I think he might have dropped him in that. It was...
How about the Robertson-Saunders fight? Every judge scored round 1 for Ben Saunders. He got put on his ass in the last minute. And that was an even round. That was a pretty even round up to that point. And then Robertson drops him and controls him on the ground.
Ben controlled, I think, that fight and probably would have got like a little bit of an edge in my boat until he got completely knocked down and fucking pounded in the face. Hello, people. What the fuck's going on?
To me, like when someone gets knocked down, that's the biggest scoring point of any round. Secondly, followed by if someone takes your back or someone takes the mount. That means that you're getting dominated.
Maybe it's from me, watching boxing, but to me, like a knockdown is a significant scoring moment. That is like you've landed a punch that knocked a person down. You deserve a point. In boxing, it's a 10-8.
Zero issue if they scored them the same way in MMA. If you drop a guy, you should get it. They should not be able to score that ninth point if they lose the round. They should lose a point for getting dropped.
You should lose a point for being dropped, and unless you like in boxing, you come back and win the round despite your drop, then you only lose by a 10-9.
Right.
Chicago really, fucked the dog in this one. I considered the Saunders Kenny Robinson fight a robbery as well. Less egregious, perhaps, than Ninjum, who really could have used the goddamn victory too. What the fuck? Poor Ramsey Ninjum.
Yeah, man. The kid's not that good either, man. His striking was pretty poor.
I was like, it's a new guy in the UFC. There was a little bit of talk about him. He might have been shuttered. He might have been bright lights, big city, and shell-shocked a little bit there. I saw some moments where I thought he was all right, and it could be good. But you really should beat Ramsey Ninjum if you want to fight in MMA in 2015.
To me, he looked like a more athletic Dustin Hazlett. I mean, he was really skilled on the ground.
Wow, going deep. We're going
exactly.
So deep.
I'm just saying, dude, Ramsey.
I'm still looking for your references down here. Hold on, dude.
That was way deep, right? Think about Dustin Hazlett, a really skilled guy on the mat. Like, he'll sub you if you give him an opening. Or he'll grab a knee bar. He'll choke you whatever way he can. But on the feet, you can knock him the fuck out. And Ramsey Ninjum was piecing him up. He hurt him several times. He wobbled him in the first, and I'm pretty sure he wobbled him in the second, too, which makes no sense to me how he won the first round on every card. And then the second round, I mean, that's the only round I could have maybe given to Holberg because once they got to the ground, he controlled a lot of it. He had some dangerous-looking submissions, but other than that moment whenever Nijum was in supposed trouble, Nijum controlled him.
Yeah.
What the hell do you want from the man?
Ultimately, not that great of a fight. So,
No.
As much as I'm, pleading the case for Ramsey Nijum getting screwed here, if Ramsey Nijum doesn't fight in the UFC anymore, I think we're all okay. We'll all be all fine.
I'd be fine for getting stripper Ramsey. Yeah.
And we're good. No more Ramsey Nijum in the UFC. I'm just going to run through some quick things and just let's rapid fire. I'll do this. I'll tell you what happened in the fight. You tell me if the loser, if you're more sad or if you're more disappointed in the loser or impressed by the winner. All right? I give you the fight. I tell you the results. You tell me, is it the loser sucks or was the winner awesome? First fight of the night, Zach Cummings KOs Dominique Steele in the first round.
Oh, Dominique Steele is just a sad, sad man. He looked super happy walking to the cage.
That didn't last long.
He was super happy to be there.
But all right, Elizabeth Phillips wins a unanimous decision, 29-28 on 3 scorecards against Jessamine Duke.
But she loses all privacy and her nipple is shown to the world. I mean, both of them are pretty sad.
Oh, poor lady.
Not
not impressed. Cut both of those fighters. That shouldn't be in the UFC.
Yeah.
We talked about Ramsey Nijum's win-loss. James Krause subs Darren Cruikshank in one of just the fastest, funniest upset wins of the night.
Oh, man. Darren Cruikshank, boy. What the hell, man? Disappointed in my boy Darren Cruikshank. Lost a couple units on that fight. I'm still in the camp that thinks James Krause sucks, so I'll be looking forward to fade him. Another disappointing fight for me.
Listen, this is what happens in this fight. James Krause isn't a very good fighter and probably, shouldn't be invested on in the future. But right. Darren Cruikshank is a hand grenade. He can. It's either going to explode in his hand or he's just going to blow up on someone and knock him the fuck out. Dude just looked inept. Brian Caraway, unanimous decision with some random scores. I think he got 130-27 and the 29-28 times 2 over Eddie Wineland. Eddie Wineland's done in the UFC and looks shell-shocked, or Brian Caraway is a world beater?
I mean, I was already in the camp saying that Eddie Wineland was done before this fight, so I'm not going to feel sorry for him. I'm going to be, happy for Brian Caraway because he showed off some improved striking. It still looked kind of awkward and shit, but he was hitting him. So, I mean, props to Brian. He got it done.
For the record, I've been super supporting parlaying the Cupcake couple on this card.
Your Illuminati parlay. You bastard. You're the man. You're the man.
Sometimes the world's just presenting you with opportunities, and you just have to be strong enough to reach out and grab them.
It's mystifying. Why the touts are putting in their hard hours studying film, and you're just making Illuminati parlays. You should be an advisor.
I'm lighting incense. I'm eating medical marijuana. I'm drinking copious amounts of liquor, and it just comes to me. And when it comes to you, you just put the units out there. I don't even remember what that paid. I think when you parlayed them together, it was like +2 something. So yeah, it was a silly thing to parlay an underdog and a -200 favorite. But
it was so right.
It just felt so right. When it feels right, guys. When it feels right, just go for it. You're not going to miss 1.5 units. You're going to blow 1.5 units so many times in your life,
And of any 2 fighters you could have parlayed on the card outside of the champ, that was the easiest bet of the day. You didn't sweat that one bit.
I didn't sweat either fight. It was really easy, and they both kind of implemented a similar game plan. Misha actually had more success. Yeah, Misha had more success on the feet, I'd say. But poor Eddie Wineland for a minute. Eddie Wineland, after coming back from the broken jaw, just looks like he can't find his range, or just like doesn't want to flow into a close enough arena where he can get clipped really hard. I don't know. I don't know if Eddie Wineland gets one more fight in the UFC, or if maybe he should call it a day.
I think you should call it a day. I mean, can you blame the man for being gun shy? The last 2 times that he suffered defeat, he got spin kicked to oblivion and got his fucking jaw blasted off by 2 Novo União guys. I think it's time to put the dog down in the case of Eddie Allen.
Yeah, it's time to stop idolizing dudes who were great in the WEC as well. The WEC ended years ago at this point. If you were relevant, the light heavyweight champion of the WEC was working from the commentary booth today. That is where the man himself, B-Stan.
Biggest fan of sports.
I'm loving what he's doing out there. He's a great dude. Who couldn't like Brian Stan? Funniest guy. We talked a little bit about Ben Saunders and Kenny Robinson. Ben taking the victory there with the most dangerous guard game maybe in MMA, a toss-up between him and Tony Ferguson. But clearly Kenny's fight, I think, that second round kind of being, I guess, the questionable one in that sense. Let me check the notes here. Yeah, I think Ben clearly won the third round. I don't see how you scored 1 and 2 to Ben.
I don't either. You could tell late in the first, I guess late in the first is when Ben got dropped, but a little bit before that, the body kicks were bothering Kenny a little bit, and maybe it was his arm that was blocking him, it was bothering him. Yeah. Then he used that arm to drop Ben. The second round, Kenny looked tired as shit. Ben looked tired as shit, but Kenny was definitely more effective. He was pushing forward, and he was landing in combination. Whereas Ben would land a random knee or, hit him with a punch that didn't have a lot on it. I don't know, man. I like Ben Saunders. I think he's got a cool game. I don't think he's a great fighter. Put him in action fights. That's the kind of shit I want to see. I was questioning how this fight would go. I suspected a decision, and I thought that Kenny Robertson would grind him out, which he sort of did in a way, but he didn't get the decision. So
I think that Ben Saunders is kind of like a Joe Lozon. Joe Lozon. I think he can, be in exciting fights with the right matchups. He can be an opener kind of guy. Get some excitement, but you gotta match him up well. Don't give him some fights where where he's not going to shine and get him out of the UFC with some losses. I think. I'm very interested to see, him fight again. I think the UFC should stick with him a little bit. Let's touch briefly on Danny Castillo against Jim Miller, probably the snoozer of the night. At this point in the card, we had 2 straight decisions, and this one just straight took it out of me. I was fucking done after this fight. Thank God we had some turnaround before we got to the main card, but this fight to me, bore of the night.
It wasn't the most exciting. I'm a fan of Jim Miller. I should disclose that ahead of time. This wasn't his most exciting fight for sure.
Biased fuck.
Well, maybe so, but you know what? I could pick worse men to be biased for, Andrew, because he's relatively exciting in general. This fight, not so much. But
real quick story. The first UFC fight I ever saw was Jim Miller versus Nate Diaz in Jersey, right outside the Meadowlands. And Nick Diaz chokes him out, I think, second, middle round, somewhere around there. Didn't
almost
go into the
bite his tongue off, yeah.
Yeah, I'm blackout drunk in the stands. I had bullshitted my way into having third row seats because I'm by myself. I'm wasted, drunk. I told them I had a leg injury. And I couldn't walk up and down all these stairs anymore. Now that I was down there, they got just talking at them enough that they're like, "Drunk kid, just sit, shut up, sit. No one cares." As soon as he went, there was all these dudes who were just Jim Miller Army, wearing camo T-shirts and shit. And I just drunkenly I'm fucked up, and I'm giving him middle finger, being like, "What, son? What?"
209.
Stockton, bitch. I'm from fucking New Hampshire. I grew up. I live in Brooklyn, and I'm claiming Stockton, flexing in front of these dudes, just being the drunkest, most obnoxious asshole. So that's my level of fandom towards Jim Miller.
Okay, at that day, you don't like the guy. It is what it is. But I think at this point in his career, a lot of people saying he was done. I don't agree with that. I don't think losing to Donald Cerrone and getting just out physical by a bigger man in Beneil Dariush, who is essentially the same fighter Jim Miller is, just a younger, newer breed of him. And so put Jim in some action fights. I expected this fight to take place more on the ground, which I thought would be more exciting.
Yeah.
It didn't, and it sort of played out the way I thought it would. Jim just wasn't as active as I thought he might be, but he did pick up the decision. I think it was rightfully deserved. It was very close, but I bet on Jim, so maybe I'm biased, but we cashed that one, thankfully. God knows I needed it because I didn't cash too many bets tonight. But, dude, why not put Jim Miller in some fun fights at this point in his career? Can we get the Jim Miller-Joe Lozon rematch? That would be fun. That would be fantastic.
I'm 100% down with this. Put Jim Miller on the seniors tour, man. It seems a little early for him, but just, get him in some money fights.
No.
We got to develop, the UFC, senior league. We know what's up. We want to see the names. They don't have the skill level to fight the elite guys. It doesn't matter. Everyone still wants to see, they want to hear, some CCR pumping. Get Jim Miller out there. He didn't go with CCR tonight. Big mistake.
That's why it was close. That's the only reason it was close. He would have easily guillotined him otherwise.
It would have been a finish if you throw a little credence on the tape deck. He easily gets in a choke. But this fight was dull as hell. Moving on from it. Tom Lawler with the second round KO of John Vellante, who's probably just got too many wars in too short of a period. But Tom Lawler takes 2 years off the game, gets big brothered for all of round one, and then just a Hail Mary right hook, I believe, KOs him. Did this one, make you feel good for, Tom Lawler or bad for John Vellante?
Made me feel bad for myself, to be honest. I didn't bet on this fight, but I did a few. I've been writing for Last Word on Sports a little bit recently. I did a DraftKings and a counter move preview for each. And, at the price, being over a 2-1 favorite, Vellante was so tempting. I had to put him in both teams, and he looked so damn good. I thought he might get the finish. And then he just pulled a Todd Duffy, and Mike Russo just finished him. It was like, what the fuck, Vellante? He looked fine. I mean, he looked good.
Here's the truth of John Vellante. He never looks good, so don't say that.
I'm talking about.
He looked like he was winning the fight against a dude he was vastly bigger than.
Vellante's winning. That's good in his book. He's not very good, Andrew. If he's winning, it's good. I'm like, okay, you're putting on a hell of a performance. You're getting hit a little bit, but you're bigger and you're pushing this to. Oh, you're knocked out unconscious, and then you get up and complain as you fall through the cage door. Okay. That
was unreal, too. He almost fell straight through the cage door. I thought they opened the door, by mistake early, but looking at the replay, it looked like just his big ass just almost knocked the fucking door loose.
Someone must have unlatched it. I mean, they must have been on their way in, and I don't know. I didn't see a good look of it, but...
There can't be that flimsy doors in the octagon, right?
Sure enough.
There is someone watching this shit.
But how does a man that's a Division I wrestler from Hofstra who trains every day with Chris Weidman, how does he suck so much dick?
Dude, this is what I'm telling people about. I proposed the theory on Half the Battle with Daniel Levy. Shout out to Dan. These guys who are number 2s at gyms, they have the worst careers. All of a sudden, they just get beat the fuck up in sparring once a week. Twice a week, their confidence is broken, their chins get destroyed. It's Cesar Mutante disease, essentially.
Yeah, man, that guy. That's awesome. I love fading that dude.
He is the epitome of the number 2. He must have been head kicked by Vitor Belfort probably 100 times. Head kick knockouts, 100's over-exaggerating it. But if someone tried to tell me that it happened less than a dozen times in training, I would call them a fucking liar. Cesar Mutante has taken at least a dozen head kick knockouts in the gym.
For sure, man. I mean, you can't get real life action. You can't get good fight simulation on the heavy bag. You've got to knock fucking dudes out. And I'm sure Vitor's like, it'll just make you tougher. It'll make you tougher.
Exactly.
And then he falls like a fucking ton of bricks and gets back up, gets dusted over again. It is what it is.
Vitor Belfort's brain damage recovery plan involves reading the Bible.
No
cryotherapy. No.
I think it really involves 3 letters, PED, but I don't think he can use that anymore. So
They'll find new juice for Vitor. That's another dude that needs to be on the senior tour. And in the senior tour, let people use steroids. Let's be real about it. Come on, guys.
I liked the sport better whenever I didn't have to hear about steroids or TRT. I didn't even know who was on what. I just watched guys fight and kill each other. It was great.
I find an extreme amount of irony in the fact that everyone who is staunchly anti-PED in the sport also are like rabid old Pride fans. And it's like, I think that was probably the sport at its very cleanest there when it was ran by the Japanese mafia.
Yes, for sure. When it said in their contracts that they could use whatever they wanted to, and there would be no drug testing.
Everyone coming out of the gates to, fanboy over Gomi tonight, and and in the same breath supporting, a vast anti-doping policy for the UFC. Which brings us to the final one. We're going to talk about this as our final point, and then we're going to close, let everyone go for the night. Poor Takanori Gomi got just wrapped up and...
He got fireballed, bro. I wore the Pride shirt. I mean, I was rooting for Joe. Don't get me wrong. I had to wear the Pride shirt because I got respect for the man, Fireball Kid. I've been sipping on the Fireball. I've been trying to, I was hoping for fight of the night type action, and it became obvious fairly quickly that Gomi just didn't want none. And then he ended up face down. Was that not the weirdest ending that you've ever seen?
Yeah.
I've seen some non-endings like Paul Harris. Who was it that he did that to? Was it Dan Miller when he jumped on top of the fence and the fight wasn't over yet?
Yeah, Paul Harris did. Yeah, that was legend.
Dan Miller, I think. Okay, so, or like when, Paul Harris is notable for that several times. But, Joe was like just beating the poor son of a bitch, and Herb Dean was asleep or something. I mean, God, what the fuck was up with Herb tonight? He watched Barao fall down nearly 3 times.
Oh my God, that stoppage!
Gomi went limp like 2 or 3 times. I thought Gomi was about to tap, honestly, and then Joe just gets up. He's like, "Oh yeah, we got this," and then
he's beating his ass so bad he got sad. Poor Joe Lozon got sad. He starts thinking about his kid with cancer. He's beating the shit out of Gomi so much, man.
You see Herb is like, he's looking down at Gomi. He's like, well, he's only like partially KO'd. Joe, are you going to finish him? And Joe's like,
I'm good. Nah, just let it be. And he's like, yeah, good point.
He takes a couple steps towards Gomi, and then Gomi's like slowly getting up, like looking at the ceiling. And then Herb's like, "Oh fuck, my bad."
Think about how terrible it would be if Herb Dean was just like, "No, you got to keep fighting," and then just Joe Lozon ran up and clean clocked Gomi like right in the mouth. That would have been Gomi dying on Fox, a Japanese legend on MMA.
It would have only been suitable if he went out with a soccer kick. He just took one right to the face.
Oh, that would be Pride all the way.
He was in perfect soccer kick position. Just saying.
He was lined up to be...
I'm an advocate of soccer kicks, man. I love soccer, and I love guys getting kicked in the face, so why not?
My thing is like, it's a legitimate thing. If you and I were in a fight, and we were fighting each other, to the death, and you were on the ground, I would definitely try to soccer kick you in the dome.
Oh, hell yeah, why not? I mean,
it's a legitimate technique. It's gonna fucking kill you. You're gonna go out.
It's probably the most legitimate technique if you want to get down to it. I mean, would you rather punch a guy in the face with your hand or run at him full speed and kick him in the face?
I would rather run full speed and kick you in the dick. I think that's the most effective strike in all of mixed martial arts.
You can ask Paul Felder how that feels. Holy shit, that was intense.
Paul Felder took a dick shot from hell. From hell
to the nutsack. My God.
And he kind of shrugged it off pretty quickly for the size of it. I think like he thought that he had that he had Ed early because of the bruising around his right eye, and he wanted to keep on him. But yeah, props to Paul Felder for eating a dick shot.
He might just not be packing, bro.
You never know. He's got that little Irish dick.
I thought about making a joke, but then I didn't want to offend you. I don't know if you guys run the same kind of heritage line. I'm not fucking with you, my man. I'm
not even Irish.
I know. But it was a ginger joke. I'm sorry. It was poor. It was a poor taste of almost joke from me.
Listen, gingers can pack a hog, dude.
Can, but do they always?
Let's not have my ex-girlfriend's comment on this YouTube page.
Whoa! What about where's your lady at?
Oh, she can't know about any of this. She's not allowed to. She's not allowed to know this show exists.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So overall, let's talk about the card as a whole. Where do you grade it? A to F. What do you think?
Oh man, the bad decisions left a poor taste in my mouth. A couple lackluster fights. The main card picked it
You
up.
lost money.
Oh, that doesn't usually bother me. I mean, it's just part of the game. I'm just being 100%, man. Yeah, I hate it. I hate seeing people bitch about getting robbed or losing money. It's just if you bet on the sport, it comes with the territory, dude. I mean,
You fucking lose sometimes.
that's just like that's the same as saying, "Oh, well, I lost my bet because I didn't know Jean Vellante sucked ass." Well, if you didn't know that, you obviously didn't do your due diligence. So, I mean, the same thing. You know you're going to get fucked in the ass occasionally when you bet on MMA. I'm not mad about it. I lost like 3.5, 4 units tonight. But the card was like a B- for me. I think the main event, the starching that TJ put on Renan Barao, could have elevated that score, but I'm going to leave it at a B- because I knew you'd ask me that question. I had that in my head as the card was going along.
I like that. There was a stretch during the early Fox prelim that was just really not too entertaining for me. That really held this card back. I think that the Miesha Tate fight, while it had some moments, wasn't all that entertaining.
That booty though. That booty though.
Paul Felder and some Barboza was amazing. TJ doing his thing was amazing. Even watching Joe Lauza, as sad as it was, wrap up Gomi, that was great. I'll give it a solid B, and we'll call it at that. All right, so that's Before the Bald Man Speaks for UFC on Fox 16. I want to thank you, Joey, for coming on the show, and I'll give you a chance right here to make any plugs you want.
Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it just as much as the last time, if not more. I hope to get back on again soon. I really like what you're doing here. Everyone should be thanking you every night on Twitter after these events because you're saving us from Karen Bryant. You're saving us from DC pointing fingers into Brian Stan's face. You're saving us from, the shit that is, MMA post-fight shows and from bald men screaming. So anyway, congratulations. You got a great thing going here. Thanks for putting me on. You can follow me at Joey G Sports, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. Follow my co-host on CageCast, Nate Miller. That's Nate Miller MMA. And I do a little writing for Last Word on Sports. Check that shit out.
All right. Thanks again, and we do appreciate the kind words. We are the internet's alternative to shitty corporate nonsense. These post-fight shows, you're literally watching more minutes of commercials than you are watching anything of substance content-wise. You have to listen to Karen Bryant, which is probably detrimental to your IQ in just very, very severe ways. I like to support women in the media in general, just because I think there's a lot of people like Heidi Angelo gets a bad rap. I think she does a fine job. People always hate on her.
That's fair.
But Karen Bryant is a goddamn blight, not just for female journalists, but just journalists everywhere. She's a terrible, terrible thing to put on a television, and Fox should be ashamed. We'll conclude on that note. Thank you, everyone who watches this show live, who supports it by commenting it, who retweets it on Twitter, and shares it on YouTube. Thank you. It's one of my favorite things to do is this show, and I appreciate everyone supporting me. So once again, thank you. My name's Andrew Lawrence. You can always hit me up on Twitter at @TheClownKid. Say some funny shit to me, because usually I won't respond if you don't. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace out, kids.